Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Film Fan Club Show. I'm Sam Carrico. We've got a great show for you today. Later on, Ron Placone will be here to talk about the pilot for his new web series, plus his independent film. But first, we've got a lot of news stories to get to. Carrie Fisher posthumously received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It was very sweet. In attendance were her daughter, that's Billie Lourd. Mark Hamill was also there, and so was a CGI version of Carrie Fisher using leftover footage from Force Awakens. James Gunn is currently looking for a new Clark Kent in Superman Legacy. David Cornsweet and Jacob Elordi have auditioned, but I'm hearing that the frontrunner is a guy named Henry Cavill. For that joke, I was just going to show a picture of Henry Cavill and a ridiculous mustache, but then I remembered we've already seen that. Willem Dafoe is joining Michael Keaton and Jenna Ortega in Beetlejuice 2, which is slated for release in September of next year. No word yet on what TikTok dance Jenna Ortega will be doing, but I hear she's already hard at work rewriting the script. Brianna Hildebrand is coming back for Deadpool 3, thank God. Hildebrand is a bisexual, but she plays the lesbian character Negasonic in the movies, and I'll admit I'm biased. She and I met at a Comic-Con here in Tulsa, and I think we hit it off, so frankly, I'm excited at the possibility of a redo. I mean, if she comes back, maybe we could even go on a date or something, you know? It would be such a nice change of pace, too, for one of my dates to pretend to be a lesbian before meeting me instead of after. It was announced recently that Dwayne Johnson will be coming back for a future installment of the Fast and Furious franchise, even after a widely publicized dispute with Vin Diesel. You may remember they did a spin-off, Hobbs and Shaw, just so Vin and The Rock didn't have to work together anymore. But that was before Black Adam. Geez, I knew that movie was going to change the hierarchy of power, but I had no idea it would put Vin Diesel on top. I think we actually have some video of Vin welcoming The Rock back to set. Can we play that?
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
It's actually what my ex said to me after I asked her to take me back. Didn't work. I also saw Peter Pan and Wendy not too long ago. I don't want to do a whole show about it, but man, they made some choices. Peter Pan is now played by a British boy of color, and Captain Hook is now a former Lost boy who was banished by Peter for missing his mom. You heard right, Peter Pan is now diverse, but he's also an asshole. I mean, the old Peter just kidnapped children, and that I can forgive. But to cut off an entire relationship just because the other person wants more? What are you, my ex-girlfriend? I'm not done yet. Tiger Lily is in the movie, but she no longer gets kidnapped. No, instead it's Wendy's brothers. This causes a chain reaction so that, thank God, we no longer have to meet Tiger Lily's family, who were portrayed with red faces in the original film. I mean, that would have been an easy fix, but I guess Disney thought that instead of risking bad representation, they'd just have no representation. I'm sure a lot of native actors would have liked to have had those roles too, but apparently feeling seen doesn't mean giving them actual work. It means just having their kids watch Peter Pan and Wendy on Disney+. That way they can see Tiger Lily be a girl boss. I mean, this erasure is out of control, not even mentioning giving a straight actor a role clearly meant for a gay guy. The Walt Disney Company has announced that Hulu and Disney Plus will be combined into one app by the end of the year. Finally, less subscriptions. I don't know what they plan on calling the new app, if it'll be Dulu or something like that, but I hear Hisney Plus is already taken by a gay porn parody site. Seriously though, it's not a great time to be a streamer. With the strike going on, a lot of people are threatening to cancel their Netflix subscriptions until writers are adequately paid. Yeah, thousands of people are doing this. But since they all share Netflix accounts, only about a dozen or so were affected. I mean, the strike is making its way to the very top, though. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy weighed in, saying, quote, "I would like to see the whole situation resolved truly in an environment where people can talk about what some of the really complicated issues are affecting the entire industry." Jesus, did Kamala Harris write that statement? That had more asterisks and qualifiers than HBO trying to call Velma a success. She continued, quote, "But when it comes to acknowledging the importance of writing, I think everybody out there has demonstrated that you cannot do any of this without great writing." And she would know because she's tried. Just look at the Star Wars sequels. Okay, we've got a great show. Let's get right to my interview with comedian and filmmaker Ron Placone. Ron, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me. Sorry we can't see each other, or I guess I can't see you, but you'll just have to have me back on because I'm going to be making more films. So next time we'll both be visual.
Yeah, visual format is the best. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but you're a real one for rolling with the punches. I've been a fan. I already said this a little bit, but I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit more. I've been watching your content for a while. I've seen your work on other shows. I've seen Get Your News On with Ron. I think I've seen you do stand-up as well. I was too embarrassed, though, to say hi. I gotta say, I was too embarrassed to come up and
Oh,
say hi. You did
when
in
did you come to a show?
in 2018. You came with the Jimmy Dore show to Austin, Texas, and I drove from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Austin, Texas to see you guys. And I saw you there, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's Ron!" And I chickened out. So you coming back on the show, my show, is a real treat for me. Thank you.
Man, how long of a drive is that?
It's a nine
Tulsa to
hour drive or
Austin.
so, about 8 hours or so.
Man,
I was
all
excited to
right.
go to Austin. I was really into the Jimmy Dore show at the time, and I was a big fan of. I'm still a big fan of your stand up comedy. So I'm excited to see you take this jump into narrative fiction, though. So I want
Thank
to
you.
ask, how has that been for you? What kind of prompted you to do this?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for the support. I appreciate it a bunch, and thank you especially for like following me into this new chapter. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've always been a writer. I mean, I came out to LA in 2016. Largely to just be a writer. That's what I expected to happen. I was a road comic before that, which is exactly what it sounds like. I just went around doing 45 weeks of stand-up comedy a year, and it was a fun way to live for a while. But eventually, I kind of got tired of it and didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to go to LA and see what's next. Try to do something in the industry, like they say. And I thought I was just going to be a writer on a show, and I ended up started working with the Jimmy Dore show, like you mentioned, and you saw it in Austin, and was there for a little while. So in the meantime, I mean, I was always writing pilots and stuff like that. I just wasn't doing a whole lot with them because I wasn't, like I was just working elsewhere and stuff like that. So, when I quit that show, I was kind of just thinking, okay, what's next? And by that point, I had a lot more stuff written because one of the things about the lockdown was it gave us all time to kind of write. Or I guess not everybody. I mean, I guess if you had kids or something, or had one of the essential jobs or whatever, you didn't have that. But for me, I was just not able to tour and was just
Yeah.
stuck at home. So I was like, well, at least I can get my writing portfolio to a better place. That's one thing I can do. So yeah, I wrote Loner with the intention of making it. And my feature Left It Wall, which we can talk about as well, because we just finished shooting that. I wrote that with the intention of making it. So
Yeah.
I started writing things with the intention of making them. And that's basically how things started. I knew that I wanted to do Loner as a webisode because I wanted to kind of introduce myself to that world. I
Yeah.
didn't want my first thing to be like, with my feature Left It Wall, we're going to do like the festival route and stuff like that. But I didn't want my first thing to be that. I kind of wanted a little bit, because so many people just know me as a podcaster or whatever. I wanted to like have like, hey, here's a pilot that I made,
Right.
like this is kind of, so I wanted to have sort of like an opening act, if you will, for the feature. But Loner is also something that I really enjoyed making all on its own, and because I've gotten some positive feedback on it, which has been really, really cool. And so, I want to make the rest of it. I want to make a couple more episodes and finish the story. If you watch, Loner is very much a first episode. There's more to that
Yeah.
story. So,
It definitely feels like a pilot, but also it does feel like a little bit of I guess I could see it as a one-off. If it was intended, I could see you could kind of, if you needed to, you could leave the ending open to interpretation. But it definitely works
yeah.
as a pilot because it's like, okay, now the story is really getting going. And I want to see where it goes. You mentioned writing it through the pandemic, and obviously the story is very pandemic centric. So I could see, and what I thought was really funny was all the little things that we all kind of universally went through, but I didn't realize with such a stark example of how we all kind of universally dealt with the same annoyances, like dealing with Zoom and coworkers and managers trying to micromanage when they don't really know how because they're from afar, and all these little things.
Yeah.
And then having the coffee cup right next to the whiskey bottle because what is time anymore? All these little things that were not really in your face gags, but all a part of the experience. And I'm like, oh my God, this is literally me in 2020. Oh my gosh. So So I really enjoyed that. So could you just talk a little bit about the
Thank
writing
you.
process and what you took away from the pandemic? Maybe mention maybe some of your inspirations along while you were writing this pilot.
Well, I would say that at least what I was going for was that Loner is not about the pandemic. Loner is about a guy going through kind of self-discovery
Hmm.
through the backdrop of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And their world is different than ours. Like it's not called Zoom, it's called Vroom.
Right.
So it is, I mean, even though there's a lot of similarities and it's very much based on our world, it is like, a different world. So, and we kind of plan to take some liberties there, although a lot of stuff is based on what happened throughout the pandemic,
Right.
from 2020 to 2021 or whatever. So yeah, I mean, obviously I kind of got that idea of like, well, you're sort of isolated and you have all this time to reflect, and what would kind of be, like a funny premise. And I thought, well, what if there was a guy who like has to go through all this,
Yeah.
realizing missed opportunities in his life, and what if he could be like, what if he was in a situation where he could be rich right now?
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, what would such a scenario be? And it's like, okay, well, what if someone in his life invented, Zoom, which of
Yeah.
course we call Vroom in the show. And then I thought like, well, it would be even funnier if it's like a past lover or something that he
Yeah.
never got over. And that's basically the premise for Loner. This guy, he's an IT guy, just kind of going through life, never really had a ton of self-reflection, being isolated the way he is, it's forcing him to do that self-reflection. And he's realizing, just all the missed opportunities that he's had in life. One of the biggest ones being he didn't invest in Vroom when he had a chance to. And had he done that, he'd be very wealthy right now. And it's because he wasn't a supportive partner. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, there's still a lot we don't know. We don't know, like we don't know the character who invented Vroom. Her name is Chris, and the main character's name is Jordan. We don't know exactly, were Jordan and Chris together when she asked him to invest in Vroom? We don't know for sure. Maybe they
Right.
were just friends at that point. Maybe they were romantically involved. Maybe they were kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily know yet. We know that he wasn't a very good person to her in that regard, that like he had the funds to do it and he just didn't. So yeah, and that's why I want to tell the rest of the story, because we find out more about Jordan and why he is the way that he is, and it's kind of like, is he going to take that turn in a better direction? So
Yeah, I'm excited to see more. We talked
thank
about the
you.
writing process a little bit, and now getting everybody together to shoot this thing. You mentioned to me that you co-directed that. Can you talk a little bit about the collaboration with the other director, and then the larger collaboration with everybody on set making this thing happen?
I mean, we were very much like just a small grassroots team, like it's I basically, I just the DP just kind of helped direct it to kind of alleviate me a little bit, so I wasn't just
Okay.
directing the whole thing by myself. But it was just me, a DP, and a location sound guy. And then for the cast, I mean, everyone is a voiceover except for me.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when I wrote Loner, I wrote something where I'm like, okay, if I had to, I could make this thing on a phone.
Hmm.
Like, so I could make this thing, like as simply as possible. Obviously we got to do a more elaborate production than that. But yeah, like everybody just kind of came over one day, did their voiceovers, and then on another day we just shot like all my parts, and then just combined it, and that was basically how we made Loner, and that's probably how we'll make future episodes. I mean, Loner is it's not very difficult from a production standpoint. They're short episodes. There was only one guy physically on camera because that's part of the theme, because it's supposed to take place during lockdown.
Yeah.
And that was all intentional on my part. Some of the VO people, they literally just submitted it remotely.
Yeah.
So not only was this done through the backdrop of the pandemic, but it was also keeping the pandemic in mind. So
That is a lot of
so
stuff to. That's a lot of hurdles to overcome, the pandemic and everything, because that's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult for all of us, and my feature Left It Wall, which obviously the team for that was a lot bigger. There were more, the cast is bigger, and the team was bigger. But even just team building for that, I mean, we had to deal with just the pandemic. I mean, the trailer for my movie was dropped in 2021, and we finally,
Yeah.
wrapped shooting it recently. So I mean, it took me that long to just get things together, which sometimes it takes that long anyway.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with the pandemic, that certainly didn't help. But yeah, but hey, man, that's the world we're all in. So
Yeah. I want to give a quick shout out. I know a lot of this is the DP, but the film, or so the pilot, I really liked a lot of the lighting touches, the use of like, there's a scene where you're looking at the laptop and you got the purple lighting behind you, but your face is like well lit and everything. It just is very artistically at times shot. And I was like, I like to make videos, obviously. In my day job, I do TV news, so I'm trying to always kind of like find a good shot. And I was like, man, this thing, I liked it a lot. There were a couple times where I was like, props to the DP. But I want to talk about your film as well. You mentioned, forgive my ignorance. I guess this slipped under my radar. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your film. You just finished. You mentioned that you finished shooting.
yeah, my feature is called Left It Wall. It is a comedy loosely based on what happened with GameStop in 2021.
Yeah.
And again, we made a fantasy world. It's not called GameStop. It's called Game Bytes. It's not called Reddit. It's called Red Room. But yeah, it's a comedy based on that. And it's about a feud between two brothers. Basically, one brother is a big time Wall Street hotshot. The other brother is a struggling writer in Hollywood. And the struggling Hollywood writer brother hears about his Wall Street brother's big plan to short sell a video game store. So he cooks up the whole thing online. So it's loosely based on that. It's not, the story is completely fictional.
Right.
It's just loosely based on what happened in 2021. And yeah, we dropped the trailer in 2021. I mean, we literally shortly after that event happened, I wrote the screenplay because I
Yeah.
just kind of was interested in doing such a thing. And we shot the trailer a couple months later. And we're finally just getting around to, wrapping up the actual feature shooting wise. I mean, now it's still in the editing room.
Yeah.
And I actually, in between now and then, there was word that I guess Sony is also going to make a movie about the topic.
Oh, really?
So
Huh.
yeah, so I mean, whatever. I'm not. I was a little surprised I didn't hear anything from anyone, considering our trailer's been out for a couple years, and an institution like Sony, they have people that search the internet for
Absolutely.
movies. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so I was surprised. Like I was like, look, I get it. I'm not like some big Hollywood name by any means, and nowhere close, but I'd like to think like I'm on the internet enough that
Yeah.
somebody whose job it was to look for it would have found it.
Yeah. They
So
could have optioned the script or something. Come on.
yeah, I was a little surprised, but that's okay. I mean, it's like, when that event happened, that there's going to be multiple movies about it. I'm not going to be the only one, nor did I ever think such a thing. And there's already been some documentaries and stuff like that. But I got to say, to the best of my knowledge, our trailer was first.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about that project. We're hoping to have it done as soon as we possibly can to start
Hmm.
doing some festivals with it. And yeah, you can find that trailer online. Just search Ron Placone Left It Wall on YouTube. We do still have a GoFundMe, and there are still a lot of costs with this thing. It is very much an indie film, so if anyone's interested, we welcome that. That's very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And yeah, basically, Loner was sort of like the kind of like the transitionary thing for Left It Wall. Like
Yeah.
kind of like I told you, like I wanted to have something in the film world out before I did Left It Wall, and that was the point of Loner. Although, yeah, I mean, I want to make the rest of Loner too. And the cool thing about Loner is it is just webisodes, so it will just kind of be released if we're able to do it, which hopefully we will be.
That's exciting. I want to talk quickly. You mentioned that Loner was shot in about 2 days, the pilot. I want to know how many days you
Yeah,
shot your feature.
6.
6 days?
Yeah, we,
Wow.
we we shot we shot the feature. I mean, again, it's like when I write, like for me personally, like just because I live in Los Angeles and this is just the way it is here, I'll write stuff with the intention of trying to sell it, and
Yeah.
usually like the mechanics there is I write something. I send it off to my manager, and we all cross our fingers, which is totally fine. I mean, that's the world, whatever. But every now and again, I write something with the intention of making it. And when I do that, obviously I'm more careful about locations, and I'm more careful about, like the way the scenes work and stuff like that. So kind of like Loner, I mean, I wrote Left at Wall. The locations were very, very simple. Our most complicated location was a bar. So it was a very simple film location wise. It's a narrative film, which also, makes it a lot easier production wise.
Yeah.
So there were just a lot of things that I did when I wrote that script, where it's like, okay, I'm writing this with the intention of making it. And, whenever I go to write anything, I will treat a project infinitely more different if I'm writing it with the intention of making it versus I'm writing it with the intention of trying to sell it.
Yeah.
The scripts that I write with the intention of making, I would never submit as a writing sample, because honestly, those scripts are more like just blueprints for me than
Yeah.
they are like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
especially if I'm like, I'm going to play the main character,
Hmm.
then like, basically it's like, I mean, I still care about the dialogue, but it's also like, it's also just more of a blueprint, because I know like we're going to kind of, evolve it in real time. So yeah, I mean, that's why, we were able to shoot Loner, or excuse me, Left at Wall in 6 days. And that's just kind of, the way I do things whenever I want to make something, because my production company is very much independent. It's just me and then any team I'm able to put together, and it's just based on what I can and can't finance. So you know
Yeah.
hopefully it keeps growing.
You mentioned there's a GoFundMe still for Left at Wall. If you want to
Yes.
send me that, I'll make sure I include it in the show notes for this episode. And I want to ask, what is your meter for success for the pilot for Loner? How can people? Is there maybe a Patreon or a GoFundMe that people can contribute to see more episodes of Loner? Or is it just go watch the episode, or what would you recommend?
Please. Well, first of all, yeah, go watch the episode. I hope you like it. If you do like it, and you want to help make sure that the next episodes happen, the best thing to do is just join my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Ron Placone. And we have had a couple discussions about some places that might finance, the next two episodes of Loner, which I think, I mean, I could tell it in three parts. I think, like, I
Yeah.
think it could be a three-part series. So far, episode two is already written. But I think I could like kind of tell it in a three-parter. So we have had a few talks about a potential sponsor. We've had a few talks about, like a platform that might, just straight up host it,
Wow.
and finance the next two episodes. Nothing has been cast in stone yet. So yeah, I mean, I may end up just financing it myself, which, like I will do that as soon as I'm able. And if you want to help make that happen quicker, best thing to do is become a patron, patreon.com/Ron Placone. And my Patreon's a lot of fun, and it's a give what you can level too. So.
Perfect. It seems like people have a good chance of seeing future episodes.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't want to not tell this story. Like, I really want to tell it. So I think no matter what, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when and how. But yeah, I mean, I when I wrote episode two, I was like, oh, I got to make this.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the rest of Loner will happen. It's just a matter of like where and how and whatnot, and if there's a, so yeah. But if you wanna help make that a reality, Patreon's the best way to do it. Just go to my Patreon. So.
Absolutely. Also, that'll be in the link. That I'll have a link for that in the description of this video. The last thing I do want to mention, we're based here in northeastern Oklahoma. You are based in Southern California, and there's a big. You mentioned episode two is already written, and that's probably a good thing too, because there's a writer's strike going on right now. So I don't. It is a very serious topic. I just kind of I feel a little bit ignorant though. I know a little bit of the details, but I just want to know the firsthand. What have you seen on the picket line?
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of the stuff that's been, just kind of going on, mostly out west. I mean, although there's the WGA East as well,
Right.
obviously, but and in New York, I mean, all the late nights, they just, they just shut down. Like, all the
Yeah.
late nights just straight up shut down. Right now, as far as what goes on here in Los Angeles, The rules kind of change every day as far as what is and isn't permissible because it's like, there's certain things. I mean, obviously, like just being creative, you're still allowed to do. If I
Hmm.
have an idea for a script and I want to write it, uh, of course you can still do that. They don't want people to not practice their craft. What you can't do is I couldn't be like, hey, I want to sell this thing. Let me
Yeah.
send this to this producer or let me send this to my manager or whatever with the intention of sending it to said producer. That you cannot do right now if it is a struck company.
Right.
Now if it's not a struck company, I think as far as I know, like that's still okay.
Oh, interesting.
I think. I mean that could be different now. I mean the reason I don't even know for sure is because to me that's just like I can't really imagine a scenario where that would. I mean, pretty much all the big companies are struck companies, so I can't
Yeah.
imagine what non-struck company you would be having a conversation with. It would probably just be like a totally independent production, which that kind of stuff is still okay.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's also going to bleed into other stuff, and as far as I know, like performing is okay, like performing as in film and TV.
Yeah.
But that could change because it looks like IATSE is going to follow suit, the like stage and theatrical employees, and it looks like SAG-AFTRA might be following suit here. So there's a good chance like we could see like a total shutdown of the industry. And like for comics like me, it's like there's certain things we do that are still going to be happening. I mean, obviously live stand up is still happening. That's
Yeah.
not part of any of this. Like an independent podcast, like that's still fine. I'm revamping my web comic Lucy and Ron, so the illustrator and I are pretty excited about that because he's impacted by the strike too. He lives over in New York, but he's impacted by the strike too. So we're
Yeah.
like, well, at least we got our cat comic to get back
Yeah.
into. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just taking it one day at a time, like everybody else, and I guess in some ways it's a good thing to have a project like an indie film in my lap because that is something that you can do right now, and
Yeah.
and that's kind of separate from all this. So if the industry is going to be quiet and completely shut down, I guess it's good to have other things coming up and whatnot, and also like I'm going to be touring some coming up, but yeah, I mean it's what the writers are asking for is beyond reasonable.
Right.
It's just like every other strike you see. I mean, they're asking for stuff they shouldn't even have to ask for.
Yeah.
Give us living wages. Give us reasonably staffed writers' rooms. Give us the appropriate amount of time to complete a contract.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like these studios are making record profits. It's way easier to staff a writer's room now anyway, because you can do it on Zoom. So
Yeah.
you don't have to pay for that Hollywood real estate anymore. So there's really no reason that they couldn't have met the writer's demand. No reason at all, other than just absurd greed and complete short-sightedness, wanting to make sure your shareholders, see exactly what they want to see every quarter. Although, again, you're making record profits, so it's
Yeah.
like, it's really discouraging and it's really frustrating. I mean, the strike should not. I mean, obviously, it needs to happen, but the writers' demands were so reasonable, and
Yeah.
it's just like the teachers' demands were reasonable, just like the warehouse workers' demands were reasonable, just like John Deere's demands were reasonable. I mean, you see the same theme every single time.
Yeah.
These demands are totally fair and reasonable. They shouldn't even have to be asked for, but the United States is just so effed up that like they're not budging on these very very reasonable asks. So you hate to see it. It's really sad, especially for people that are struggling to pay their bills right now. What I think a lot of people don't realize, 99% of the writers in Los Angeles are just regular working class
Yep.
people that they're just creatives for a job. Yes, there are those elite few who are, the people that you see in all the news articles and stuff like that, who are multimillionaires and whatnot. That's not most people. Like that's not most people are just regular working class people
Yeah.
trying to pay their bills, and they're doing it in a place like Los Angeles where the cost of living is very very high. So this idea that the writer's strike is just a bunch of, bougie elites is completely and utterly false. And I know there's only a few people that feel that way. So I'm probably preaching to like a very small group of people that probably, like aren't watching shows like this anyway. But like,
I do hear it though. I do
still,
hear, yeah, like I hear
you
people.
do hear it.
The last,
Yeah.
the last Marvel movie was bad, and I don't like Kevin Feige, so therefore writers in Hollywood shouldn't, make a living wage. I'm like, that has nothing to do with what's going on.
Paint all, I mean, yeah, and I've seen that too, and it has been very sad and frustrating to see, because it's like, how can you paint all of these people with this such a broad brush? Like,
Yeah.
oh, and look, I get that in many ways Hollywood has not met the moment. I completely agree with that, and I'm just as irritated by that as everyone else. Like we are in such a such a rough era for humankind, quite frankly, and we are in such a such a significant moment, especially in the contemporary United States. Meanwhile, Hollywood at the very top of it is just making too big to fail Marvel movies and allowing the industry to just chug along. So I get that. I share that frustration. Tons of other writers do too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like to make it out like the entire industry is just full of people that are happy about that and don't want to meet the moment. It's just very, very, very unfair and very, very inaccurate. And it's sad to see.
It's very well said, Ron. I appreciate you coming in. I love talking to you about your work, your career, your short film, and your feature. But also, thank you for providing some insight that we didn't have on what's going on there in Hollywood with the strike. Ron Placone, thank you so much for joining the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
One more thank you to Ron Placone for joining the show today. I'll have links for all of his stuff in this description of this video and the show notes of the podcast feed. I've been Sam Carrico, guys. If you want to follow me, I'm at Samuel D. Carrico on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook and TikTok at The Film Fan Club. But make sure you follow me here. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's the most important thing, because I'll see you in 2 weeks with another video. Thanks.